So I'd just like to welcome everybody to the final webinar in L'Abri-Enville's 30th anniversary webinar series titled Communities Stronger Together, the L'Abri-Enville Network. All right, I'm going to begin with the outline of the webinar. So the first part of the webinar, it's going to be me. I'm the moderator today. My name is Star Gale, and I'm the executive director for L'Abri-Enville. And I'm going to describe what the L'Abri-Enville network is. And then after that, we're going to move into the body of the webinar. And the body of the webinar is going to be members from each one of the organizations that are part of the network. And they're going to speak to what we've identified in our planning of this network as 4 themes and topics that we found kind of were a good way to give a lens to look into what the network's all about. And those themes were stewardship and caring, continuity, reciprocity, and resilience. That body of the webinar will also feature some videos that have interviews from members of the entire network. We're going to bring that to a close by looking forward into the future, and that kind of small discussion will open up our question and answer period where everyone can start their audio and video again and say hello to one another, or just hopefully we can have a rich conversation about the network. So the L'Abri-Enville network, the L'Abri-Enville model, we were actually just chatting before it started. It began in 1991, but even before that, planned as many of the sister organizations were in church basements and around people's dining tables. And our first webinar in this series, Finding a Home in the City, the beginnings of L'Abri-Enville, really describes that process. And it was a long process. We had many founders that were committed to that, Eleanor Beattie, Bob Bassett, Marjorie Sharp, were all mentioned in a way in their words or participated in that first webinar to really kind of explain how L'Abri came about. And over the next decade, the idea that community could come together and provide housing and community support for people diagnosed with a mental illness had grown into what you see there in your screen. So there was 10 3-bedroom apartments that were rented across Montreal that housed 30 residents when we're at capacity, and it was supported by 3 coordinators, approximately 60 volunteers that were board members or apartment volunteers. And if you see, there's circles that radiate out. There was a kind of ecology of support that was built up around the model. And that's where it was, and it's changed since then. I have I have an executive director position, which used to be lead coordinator, and I think that evolution is something that all of the members of the network have experienced in some way. In 2001, in part by the good work and foresight of another one of our volunteers, Nancy Grayson, the decision was kind of made, a conversation was made about how L'Abri would move forward from this point. And the decision was made that they would stay small, but that they accessed some funding from Human Resources Development Canada, the Supporting Communities Partnership Initiative. And the thought was there that they could take this good idea, keep the community the size that it was, but take this good idea and disseminate it to other interested communities. And so out of that, 3 other organizations came to be, which makes up our network. And that was Our Harbour in St. Lambert, Quebec, Les Toits de Mille in Chateauguay, and Ancoura in Ottawa. And I'm going to give probably the briefest description that you could hear of those sister organizations, because it's tough. You know, we had a whole hour and a half dedicated to how L'Abri came about. And I don't want to leave anything out, but I just want to say that you know, these are simple descriptions of kind of milestones in those organizations coming about, but they had similar, really rich development that was based in grassroots community organization, just like L'Abri. Our Harbour, that community organization began in 2002. In 2003, they were named, and today they have 8 apartments with 3 residents each. Les Toits de Mille began in 2002, and it was actually named after a poet from Quebec who had managed life with mental illness. And today they have 5 apartments, and they're a little bit different from L'Abri in that they have a mix of 2 or 3 residents each. And Ancoura in 2007, community organization around that project began. 2008, they decided on their name, Ancoura, which is a mix of anchor and heart. And today they have 7 townhouses that have 3 residents each. And so I'm just going to introduce these themes that the webinar is planned around: stewardship and caring, continuity, reciprocity, and resilience, by this sentence. So this sentence, inherent in the strength of our model, is that the circle of community that supports our residents is small enough for intimacy and large enough for variety. And that's actually the first sentence that comes underneath the heading, the idea of disseminating the model from the L'Abri-Ville guide. And I thought that was a good way to kind of open it up. And now I'd like to introduce Cecily Lawson, who will be describing our first theme.
Thanks very much, Star. My name is Cecily Lawson, and I'm the president of L'Abri-Ville. I first joined L'Abri about 12 years ago as an apartment volunteer, and 3 or 4 years after that went on to the board, and here I am. Stewardship and caring. When I first started to think about this, I went to a dictionary and looked up a definition for stewardship, and here we have it: the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. And I think this describes basically what's happened with our model. We started 30 years ago, and a series of people have carefully and responsibly managed that model, so that here we are, and we're still a strong and vibrant organization, as are our sister organizations. To me, there are 3 very important aspects of stewardship that I'd like to talk about a little today. The first is our funding, our resources, and the need to find those resources and also to manage them. So good stewardship involves nurturing relationships with our funders. That's something that is done on an ongoing basis by our board members and by our staff. And it also involves managing those resources well. And I think all 4 of our organizations that tend to have a very frugal philosophy in dealing with those resources entrusted to us. Another aspect of good stewardship is having a good decision-making process, because the decisions that we make today will affect the organization in the past, just as the decisions made in years past have made us the organization that we are. So we're very careful to be very deliberate, to be consultative, to be transparent, and to just be conscious of how important making good decisions is for our organization, just to maintain a very strong and vibrant one. And moving on, the other aspect to that is the importance of creativity and innovation when you're managing an organization, and the need to step back and look at things from a wider perspective. And I think for me, one of the best examples of that recently is at the time of COVID, when COVID first started, a suggestion made by STAR to to establish a small group, a COVID task force that could just meet on a regular basis and thrash out issues around COVID and around the pandemic. And that really helped us to deal with some fairly thorny issues. I'm also tasked with talking about caring. I'm just going to say that it's at the center of our organizations and other organizations, and I will hand it back to Star in the knowledge that other people will elaborate on that.
And now I will introduce a video.
I'm Cheryl Lafferty. I started at L Abri, I guess it was 2013, as the lead coordinator, and moved on into the executive director position. Was with L Abri for almost 7 years, and I continue to care about L Abri. That's where I stand now. So when I think of stewardship in L Abri, I realize that every member of L Abri is part of its stewardship. From my very first day, when Marianne so welcomed me, she was my predecessor, and every volunteer, board member who came to meet me, every committee member who wanted to express what they were doing on their committees, wanted to talk about the history of L Abri, right to the residents who welcomed me into their apartments and shared what brought them to L Abri. I just felt such warmth and caring, professionalism, commitment, genuine interest and enthusiasm in the model of L Abri, and it came from everyone.
Hi folks, I'm Reverend Jennifer Mountain and I serve St. Lambert United Church. I became aware of Our Harbour when I came from Ontario in 2018. My personal relationship with Dolly and the team and some of the residents of Our Harbour clients has only strengthened. So I'm really pleased to be invited to speak on this topic of stewardship. Coming out of pandemic, St. Lambert United, and one of the areas of focus is certainly going to be related to mental health. And so this is one area where I really do believe that Our Harbour and St. Lambert United can, again, strengthen our relationship with each other and support one another, particularly for our seniors who live alone. This is related to stewardship because it's all about caring for ourselves. And the commandments say to love our neighbor, but also to love ourselves.
So my name is Peter Bean. I have been with Ancoura from the very beginning. Ancoura was really conceived around a family Thanksgiving dining room table with my sister Audrey Bean. I was a board member for a number of years, as well as I co-chaired the fundraising committee. And I've been a visiting volunteer at one of the homes from the very start, which has been incredibly rewarding personally. And I've made some permanent friends throughout the Ancoura family. An organization of this size, which isn't huge, to have a working board rather than a policy board. And that's the way ours has typically been. So we've been very fortunate over time to have excellent coordinators, and we've only recently been able to have an executive director, so he's relatively new. But and then that link with the coordinator, the senior coordinator, and the board, so that this just makes for very smooth planning and a well-oiled organization, if you will.
Je dirais que même le conseil d'administration s'est renouvelé. On est très content de par exemple, l'ajout d'une jeune femme dans la vingtaine récemment. Donc, on a réussi à passer le cap là, de la première garde qui a bien développé l'organisme, qui a su y donner son air d'aller. Et après ça, il y a eu un deuxième souffle. Et là, je pense qu'on est en train de vivre un troisième souffle à l'organisme qui va, comme ça, pouvoir grandir encore mieux avec des idées jeunes et des idées encore plus adaptées là, à la population de demain.
Our Harbour has been involved in a gardening project, which very much shows our care, not only for our physical plant, for one another, but for creation. And so this is a movement really that's involved in all faith communities as we approach a time of coming out of pandemic and returning to our hope to be a part of healing of the planet, healing of each other, supporting and caring for one another. One way that we can do that is by caring for creation in a physical way through gardening.
Hello, my name is Diane Hoyen. I'm a volunteer with Ancoura here in Ottawa. I've been involved with Ancoura since the very beginning. So I've been a volunteer for 15 years. A person from L'Abri came to Ottawa to talk about L'Abri and to see if we would be interested. And my husband was interested. So he was our founding member here. I became one of the first volunteers at our first house. 15 years I've been doing volunteering. Caring in our organization, I think it's the whole basis of our approach to our residents and the volunteers and the Ancoura staff.
Took up the baton from very capable people at that time. I thought, how can I not step up to this and keep this organization what it is, or try to help keep what it is, which is really an exemplary example of a community organization that works so well.
Hello, everyone. So that was our first section on stewardship and caring. And I would now like to introduce Brian Harrison. Brian?
Yeah, so my name is Brian Harrison. I've been with Ancoura since 2007 and seen it grow to what it is now with 7 homes and 21 residents. My role has changed over time. I was vice president for a long time, and then I was president. And now I'm the chair of the communications committee and the acting treasurer. So I've touched on many of the roles in the organization, and it's always been a joy to work with the Ancoura community. I've met so many wonderful and remarkable people, you know, residents and staff, volunteers and supporters. It's been a great experience for me, which I'm very grateful. My theme is continuity, and that is defined as the unbroken and consistent existence or operation of something over a period of time. And continuity in Ancoura expresses itself in events and activities that are repeated, and also an individual commitment to the organization. First, let me talk about some of the events that happen, and these happen every year. Unfortunately, we had cancellations in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID-19, but we generally have a gala dinner, and we had that for 7 years until COVID came along for us. And our last one in 2019, we had 200 participants at the gala dinner. So it brought together many members of the Ancoura community, and we raised a lot of funds, and we also had a lot of fun. We have a summer barbecue in a local park, and we have outdoor games, hot dogs, hamburgers, and everyone has a good time. The last time we had it, again, 2019, I think we had 70 to 80 participants for that barbecue. We have an annual Christmas party early in December with a large number of people in our community coming. And there are regular get-togethers at homes of our volunteers. So these events are fun for everyone, and they keep us all connected, and they're repeated every year. Second, we have individual commitment and continuity. We have volunteers like Peter Bean and Diane Hoyen, who you saw, who have been with us since our first home was opened in 2009. We have residents who've been with us for about a decade. We have staff that's been with us for up to 8 years, and board members like myself who've been with Ancoura for a long time. We have residents who have been housemates for a long time, and that's another form of continuity and longevity that's very important. Now we even have strong relationships with people who have been with Ancoura and are no longer with Ancoura. They often call volunteers and may get together for coffee or a walk in a park. Of course, the continuity contributes to the greater stability of those with mental health challenges. The support is not going anywhere, it's permanent. And the continuity and longevity are an anchor for our residents and their well-being. The security of knowing they have a long-term home and support is very important to the success of the Ancoura and to the L'Abri models. Thank you.
I guess I've been with this house now for about 8 years, and this fellow was really confined himself to his room and read sort of day and night, and other than coming downstairs to get something to eat. And he's progressed from that now to be a full-time employee in a relatively senior position with Health Canada. And that's really a function of you know, the continued relationships that our volunteer team has had. And in fact, one of my volunteer colleagues works for Health Canada and got him started there as a part-timer, and now he's a full-time employee. So really developing the trust with a combination of trust and friendship between the residents and the volunteers and the staff too. I mean, because they generally take quite a long time to feel comfortable just letting themselves go a little bit and feeling as though we're family.
I'm Diana Bennett. I'm a volunteer with L'Abri en Ville. Started, must be 20 years ago, with the Region Department, which then turned into the Bahama Apartment, and now I'm volunteering with the Lafayette Apartment. I've had various other roles during the years, but my most important, and the ones that means the most to me, is the one with the volunteers in the apartment. Archives is something that Eleanor Beatty saw as very, very important. And Sister Anne Leonard was volunteering with L'Abri at the time, and she was a formerly trained archivist from the Vatican and was the chief archivist of her order. And she and Eleanor, so it's going back to 2004, I think, and they spent 2 years really going over the philosophy, the history of L'Abri, so that Sister Anne Leonard could really understand and draw up a classification system. But everything from minutes of meetings they went to at the very beginning to records of telephone calls, letters, very rich material. And I came in at the very end. I know all of this history from Eleanor and Audrey Bean and Anne Reed were all involved, and Nancy Grayson and many other founders. So that material, when you talk about continuity, is well filed and well archived, well preserved. And that's a continuity that people in L'Abri can use, like you have for research and a webinar, but also it informs decision-making. If there are important decisions to be made about new directions, future directions, they can go back to founding principles and policies and use that to inform the decision-making and continuity in the process and the development of L'Abri.
Mais il y a un mot en faisant le bilan de tous les moments et toutes les personnes qui ont su mettre la main à la pâte pour fonder l'organisme et assurer la continuité. Il y a un mot qui m'est venu assez rapidement, c'est le mot gratitude. Pour les deux organismes qui ont beaucoup aidé les Toits des Milles à mettre en place des bases solides. L'Abri en ville, en particulier, qui nous a fourni plein de documents nécessaires à bien établir des bases solides. Et l'entraide aussi de l'aide de la coordonnatrice à ce moment-là auprès de notre première coordonnatrice. Et il y a aussi la collade santé mentale. Donc, ce sont les premiers moments d'entraide importants pour les Toits des Milles.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Brace. I've been involved with Our Harbour since about 2009. I'm currently on the board of directors, but I started off as a volunteer and then eventually was hired part-time as a part-time coordinator, and I worked under Praveen at that time for about 2.5 years. I think the way I see continuity is the growth that's being built into the organization right now. that we made a crucial decision to go forward and expand, allow more place for more residents. I think this speaks to the continuity. Continuity, I think about my own involvement in Our Harbour. I've been in and out of the organization over the past decade or so in different forms and different capacities, as a volunteer, as a coordinator, now on the board of directors, on the personnel committee. The organization allows people to adapt their support and their participation based on their own needs as well. You know, what works for me, what works in my time frame. So there's that flexibility built in within the organization that allows for people to come back and return in different capacities, in different forms, and continue that connection with Our Harbour. What our volunteers have found is that once you're in, it's hard to leave because it is such a wonderful organization. And not only do we love and care for the people that are at the center of the organization, but we care for our community as well. You know,
I look at the continuity, or I think about the continuity again of L'Abri, and I think about the board members. I think about the stability of staff. I mean, there weren't that many of us who left, 2 or 3, to retire. Otherwise, we'd still be there because we care. And I know that residents too, there's been long-time residents who've been there again, almost, if not from the beginning of L'Abri. I also think of continuity, and I think about the coordinators who go out on weekly visits. I think about the continuity of the, you know, monthly or the seasonal activities, whether it's the Sugar Shack or whether it's going away in the summer for a getaway. And it's something that everyone looks forward to, whether you're a volunteer, staff, resident. There's not a big turnover at L'Abri. It's been 30 years, and I think, you know, you could name everybody who's been involved. And I think that is indicative of a very well-working, stable, viable community organization.
I would now like to introduce Karina Powell from Les Toits de Mille to introduce and kind of speak a little bit to the theme of reciprocity. Karina?
Yes. Hello, everybody. So I am Corina, and my colleague Marika is here with me too. 10 years ago, we started working with Les Toits de Mille and with its volunteer team. It was our first experience with volunteers, and as the time passed by, we came to appreciate it more and more. Of course, when we talk about volunteering, we talk about reciprocity. This is because the involvement of a person in the community, it is possible only if the volunteer sees a sense in its actions. This sense rests often in the hope that we can do some good for somebody else. And when we see that our presence makes a difference in another person's life, we feel good enough about what we are doing, and we pursue our work. Our volunteers tell us they rediscover themselves, and they feel good about being able to have even if a small impact on a person's recovery. That makes them feel valued, and they are also in a wow when they witness the way that people are capable of overcoming their difficulties and the challenges in their life. Another point brought out by our volunteers is the pleasure they have of being part of a community, getting to know new people and doing activities together, feeling connected to each other. For the coordinators, we have the feeling that we gain confidence in our intervention by developing a long-time relationship with the residents, and having their feedback is reassuring for us to do our work. Actually, we came to realize that even if you are an intervention worker or a volunteer, it is the same thing. When you see that you can make a difference, you feel encouraged to go on, to keep helping. For the residents, Helping and supporting each other is an important part of the years spent in the organization. Also, they are looking after each other and informing the staff if the roommate needs help so we can intervene. That gives them a shared responsibility and a sense of taking care of another. Also, as a way to give back, the residents are always ready to welcome a new volunteer or a member and to integrate them into their lives. It is also important to mention how the process of decision-making in the organization is takes into consideration the information gathered from the residents, the reality and their needs, and they use it as the guidelines for their orientation. Vice versa, the way the residents adjust to the ways of doing of the organization is also significant. And finally, everybody has a part to play. We learn from each other and we grow together. So for us, the conclusion is clear. Helping someone is rewarding yourself.
Reciprocity is a really important thing for us to keep in mind when we're looking for volunteers, because as a volunteer, I feel as though I have learned so much and have gained so much. As well as being able to give to the residents. They inspire me so greatly with their ability to withstand all the hardships that they've gone through and to grow, to make so much progress. And in so many ways, they've contributed to my mental health in terms of being able to feel that I'm making a bit of a contribution, but also to learn from them, to laugh at things, to be mindful of what's going on in my life as well as what's happening in theirs, to be grateful for small things. They become so happy about getting a new cat, about learning a new skill, being able to knit when they couldn't before, and cooking. I remember one resident sitting when we were cooking, and he put his head back and he just says, "Oh," and I said, "Well, what's happening? You don't like this?" He said, "I've never eaten broccoli and I love it." And I thought, oh, I'm never that grateful for broccoli, but I should be. So yeah, there's the reciprocity that comes from gaining from them and giving to them. That's how I see reciprocity. Yes.
My name is Renaud Roy. I'm part of Harbour from 5 years now. And I'm also a board member of the Harbour. And I'm also technician for the computer of Our Harbour. And I repair the computer for the Harbour because sometimes they got broken, somebody erased some file that they shouldn't do. But I know all these stuff because I've been studying pretty much all my life in pure and applied science, so that's what I did. Because I could do like I said, something for them, not to be overcharged for a company that repair the software. And you just need to reinstall the software, and that's it. It's easy when you know these things. So I offer myself help for the computers, and I could write it on my resume. So I'm a board member and a technician for them. They were asking if somebody would be a board member, and I says yes, and I pretty much like it. But
Les Amis d'Émile, en fait, c'est un groupe d'activités qui sont ouverts à nos colocataires, mais aussi aux gens vivant dans la communauté élargie d'un territoire desservi, aux prises avec des problèmes de santé mentale. Et ces activités-là visent à briser l'isolement autant pour nous que pour les gens de notre territoire.
And now I would like to introduce the final live panelist that we have today, Dolly Shinhat from Our Harbour, who's going to speak on the theme of resilience. Dolly?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I've been Director General at Our Harbour since 2017, since May. And it was part of that evolution that others have spoken about, where an executive director comes in help the operational board with the work that needs to be done. And at that point, we were expanding. I've worked in large organizations like McGill, Concordia, the World Federation of Hemophilia, but this is my first time being in a grassroots organization where we work so closely with our clients, if you will. And it's a very different and very rewarding kind of work. I'm going to speak about resilience, and I think it's especially relevant given the last year that we've all been through, COVID, and talk about what resilience means. As you see from the description on the slide, it's the idea of toughness and elasticity, which seem to be contradictory at first, but actually, you know, resilience brings them together. I think there's resilience in the model of our harbour, and in fact of L Abri and our sister organizations. It's built so that it looks different in different places, but the core is the same. As someone said earlier, the core is the caring of the people that come to us for help. And I think the mission, because we all operate slightly differently, but doing the same thing sort of reflects that resilience of our mission and the model. The part that's the caring and the part that's supportive of our residents is the part that is constant amongst all of us. But the way we achieve that mission may be slightly different. The funding model as well allows for resilience because it allows us to grow in a staged manner. None of us are overextending ourselves. None of us are taking risks with the people in our care. And the way that the simplicity and the beauty of the funding model allows that resilience as well. I think, as other people have said, and we've heard a lot from volunteers and about volunteers, but certainly during COVID, our volunteers were just superstars. They really showed their ability to respond, to continue to be tough. It wasn't a question of whether or not there would be support for our residents. It was more the how to do it. And so they just sort of pivoted and started delivering food or going grocery shopping for residents who were fearful, or calling more often than they normally did. So there again, they were resilient. They didn't disappear. They weren't absent. They stayed with us through COVID and of course beyond. The next group, I'll talk about partners, and of course our partners you heard from Jennifer Mountain earlier, from St. Lambert United Church, ARC, one of the community organizations in Greenfield Park. They too showed their resilience by allowing us, by going to their council and saying, you know, our harbour needs us to be open for them. And so in September, they were able to open for us and allowed us to come in for the winter, come in from the cold of what we've been doing all summer, which was doing all of our activities outdoors. And so that's our partners have also shown their resilience and their willingness to be flexible and to be elastic, but at the same time not give in to COVID, which was really important to us. Our residents have been flexible too. They've learned how to cope with COVID. They've learned not to isolate themselves. They've been tough in that respect, and at the same time have been willing to do different things with us, willing to do everything outdoors, willing to come down and do yoga on the street, you know, on a lawn. So they've really also stepped up during COVID and showed their resilience. We did have one case of COVID amongst our 24 residents, and we still think that was a positive negative, but regardless, the person was hospitalized. She went through with it. Her roommates also were tested. A couple of they stepped up and showed their resilience and their willingness to do what needed to be done. I have to, of course, talk about our staff when I talk about resilience through COVID. Our staff just decided that, you know, we had to do our mission, and we were going to do our mission. The only question was how. So essentially, we started by talking about COVID, explaining to our residents what it all meant, and then just doing everything on the street. So whether it was an art studio, a yoga class, It didn't matter. We did it on the street. Chloe, one of my colleagues, said she didn't walk. She's never walked as much as she did during that summer of COVID because all the individual meetings were done during walks. And so that was really a pleasure to see. Bike clubs, you name it. We did it all outside the garden, as Jennifer Mountain said, as well. So our volunteers as well, in terms of our board, of course, everyone went onto Zoom as well. So that was another way that we all showed our resilience, learning this new technology, you know, remembering to turn our mutes off and on and all that sort of thing. It was funny, and it was one of the funny things of COVID. And I think it helped us all be a little bit more resilient as well. I think when it comes to the future, I think this resilience is really going to stand us in good stead. I think we will be able to change in the ways that we need to change. I don't think we'll be afraid of change because of this ability to move. I think our size, as Star said earlier, it's a small, intimate group. And I think being small also makes us resilient because it means there's not so much at stake. It's not a big thing that's going to fall. It lends itself to adaptability and flexibility. And so that's what I would leave you with in terms of resilience and the idea that this is a model that will continue to prove its resilience and its strength in the future.
Ville appliquent dans leur administration, dans leur énergie et au quotidien la résilience. Là, on a pu le voir pendant la COVID où on a réussi quand même à organiser des activités par Zoom pour nos colocataires. On s'est démené pour réussir à continuer à offrir des services malgré les nouveautés. Il y a aussi eu des deuils à vivre parce que certaines activités n'ont pas pu être tenues, autant au niveau du conseil d'administration des bénévoles que des colocataires ou des amis d'Émile. On a dû, par exemple, annuler des pluchettes de blé d'Inde annuelles ou des trucs comme ça. Donc, il y avait quand même des deuils à vivre. Ça s'est bien vécu. Les gens ont quand même réussi à garder contact par des nouvelles voies. On a réussi à se réinventer. On a même profité de cette année-là pour peaufiner notre image, revoir notre logo, nos documents de communication, notre journal, nos différentes actions qu'on peut faire. Donc, on s'est un peu réinventé dans cette année-là, ce qui fait partie, je pense, de la résilience.
You know, I said I still, obviously, I'm very connected or feel connected to L'Abri. And I think, again, that goes toward resiliency. Both, I imagine, with our sister organizations and L'Abri itself, it's that people who have moved on, people who are like myself, no longer working with L'Abri, stay connected. And I think that's, again, just a real cornerstone of what L'Abri is about. And I think with what we've all gone through in the past year plus with the pandemic, we realize how important it is to have connection, to have support, to have that social connection, but to be able to reach out and talk to someone. And yes, L'Abri is a housing model, but what underpins that housing model are all those things I just talked about: support, warmth, caring, commitment. And that's why it's so successful. And hopefully we'll be there for another 30 years.
In terms of resilience in the houses, I would say every house has managed to stay in contact with the residents in very creative ways. At my house, we've been having a Zoom meeting every Thursday night. We've had lots of phone calls and talks with each other, but the Zoom meeting every Thursday night was something that they look forward to, and so did we as volunteers, trying to ensure we stayed engaged, but also doing fun things with them. So we choose topics, and they range from anything from looking at doll houses over the centuries, looking at some 20 questions that help you to come get to know somebody else, and those were really incredible and went on for or 5 weeks because we wouldn't get through with everybody talking about themselves and their history and their favorite books and where they've traveled, those kinds of things. Other volunteers have set up online line dancing, in which one of the volunteers would lead a line dancing, and not just line dancing. They started with line dancing, but they did all kinds of dances. And the residents, and this is all by Zoom, the residents, they did trivial pursuit games and you know, all sorts of things like that, cooking classes. And so they would send out lists ahead of time of what they needed to buy for groceries and then do a cooking class together. We've had meals together. We've had cheese tasting online, all of those kinds of things. It has been challenging, but it's been very rewarding. And I would say many of the residents are saying they want to continue doing these kinds of things.
That brings the main body of the webinar to a close. I just want to thank the panelists so much, but they're not going anywhere. And also, as kind of has become the norm for these webinars, if we kind of open up the question and answer period, we might go past 6, so you're welcome to stay. And I'd like to ask if any of the panelists wanted to kind of kick off that question and answer period, that discussion, by talking about what they see when they look forward for the organization or for the model. So I'm going to stop screen sharing now. We'll go back to kind of seeing everyone, but just to be cognizant that I'll moderate the question and answer period. So I'll call on people as they raise their hands so that we don't end up kind of talking over one another.
I'll say a couple of things, if I might. And really, I was struck by so much of what people had to say in the last 40 minutes, and the emphasis on the warmth, the caring, the community, the connections, the resilience, and I guess the almost the test by fire that our organizations went through and are still going through with COVID, and what we learned about ourselves and found out about our organizations. So looking forward, I think that the fact, I think we're looking to a future where we feel very positive about our model. We feel very positive about our ability to deal with what the future brings. I know, you know, as we're able to perhaps open up our perspectives a little bit more and look at other issues besides dealing with COVID, we'll come back to some issues that we were dealing with before COVID. For L'Abri, I know one of our areas of concentration was just an outreach to bring more people into our volunteer base and onto our board. We do have people who have been with the organization for almost the entire time that the organization has been in existence, and as a result of that, we're dealing with an aging group of volunteers and board members. So we'll go back to addressing that issue and dealing with that. I think we'll do very well at it. And at the same time, we, as one of the video, I think it was Cheryl said, all of those people will remain part of our community, which is wonderful. It's just a lovely strength of L'Abri. So let me hand it over to somebody else now.
Thank you so much, Cecily. And I was just thinking too when you were saying that, and also reflecting on Dolly, like, you know, talking about the continuity or talking about the resilience. We had a pretty new staff at L'Abri when the pandemic struck, and our staff too just really like they rose to the occasion. The coordinators, Vishaka, Michelle, our student coordinator this year and last year as well. it's really remarkable that the model allows for new people to come in and kind of do that as well. I'm so grateful for their work.
You know, COVID is and continues to be a terrible thing in many ways. But really for Our Harbour, I'd have to say there was an important silver lining. You know, our response to it and taking all of that stuff outside. You know, we started a street cafe. Residents would just begin to bring their own coffees down or bring a bunch of breakfast down to share with everybody else. And it really evolved into what we have now at this church, which is a clubhouse. And it's something we've wanted to do for many, many years. And this pandemic sort of provoked it. You know, in a way, it was sort of, we had to do something in the cold. And so this clubhouse now exists and continues to grow for our residents and offers a place to come together. And so for us, people got to know one another better outside because everyone would just come down when we turned up on the street. And so there were 24 people all sort of hanging out, distanced, outdoors, following all the rules and, you know, getting to know one another better than they would have otherwise. And so it really strengthened our community. It really made those relationships even deeper. And so I hope that others also felt that there were some silver linings in this very difficult time.
Anybody else, feel free to, if you want to put up your hand and if you have anything that you want to share, or you can raise your hand in the chat as well. And Jerome, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a remark. Your outdoor meetings, Dolly, were extremely interesting. I wouldn't have thought of a better idea myself. It was it's very innovative, very, very interesting.
Well, it started off very small. Phil, our coordinator, said, you know, we should take coffee down to the street. It was miserable. It was in March, right? It was miserable still outside. And so we would pick up coffees at Tim Hortons and turn up on the street. And our volunteers, of course, baked muffins and things like that for us. And we would pick up some fruit. And so it was all served from the back of my car. And then another of our board members said, you know, it's the Our Harbour Street Cafe. So that's kind of how it started. And then there were some old tables out, you know, picnic tables on the lawns outside the apartments. And so we started to use those. And then some of the residents would bring down, you know, cereal or whatever. It just grew into a street party kind of a thing. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's the team who really came up with the idea. So, oh, there's Catherine.
Yep. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, I just want to tell, before I say that it was a great effort, Star. It was very, very good. I'm very, very proud to be part of this organization. So thank you very much. And just to tell Dolly that the accountant was on the phone and he's very happy with the work we've done this year.
Yay!
Oh
my God.
And I thought it was, and it'll be finished in the next week or so. So I just wanted to let Dolly sleep peacefully tonight.
Thank you. Thank you
so much. And thank you everybody for participating.
Catherine, I'm sorry, Star, I'm just, Catherine, what do you think of the future, Catherine, for Our Harbour and for the L'Abri model?
Oh, we're set. I mean, we'll adapt and we'll set. As you know, I'm anxious to grow a bit more. And I shall keep pushing until that happens, because I think the model is so great that more people need to have the pleasure or right to participate. More residents should be able to participate. And I'm so enthusiastic about it that I've been talking to a social worker friend of mine today about getting working with a student to put the values down on paper and produce some sort of monograph on what you've all been talking about today. And so I'm in contact with McGill and I hope I can work something out. So thank you all very much.
Okay.
Well, let us know what happens.
Yeah, I just want to say, add to what Catherine said about thanking you for doing this. It's really been an interesting presentation, and it's really a pleasure to hear all of these things articulated so well. All of the things I think we all understand and embrace, but you know, it's been very clearly described and meaningful in that way for, I think, everybody who participated, attended, and I know you guys put a lot of work into it, so thanks a lot.
Thanks, Sandra. Sandra was actually a panelist in our last webinar, and I have to say I appreciate the congratulations too from Catherine, but it's easy because I have been a moderator in here, but this was many, many, many hands. So thank you so much. Any thank that comes here is right back to everybody that I'm looking at on the screen, because everybody has contributed to this. Cecily, there.
Yeah, I did have a question. There were a couple of references to Les Amis d'Émile, and I'm just wondering if we could hear a little bit more about that. That sounded like an intriguing idea.
I think that's you, Karina.
Yes. So Les Amis d'Émile, it's a new, I don't know, part of our organization, a new program, because we always, like you, organize the activities for our residents, but we found out that finally they are the same people who come, and the circle was not very big. So we wanted to offer them the possibility to meet new people, to have more contacts. So we opened the activities for everybody on our territory who has a mental health problem. So our group grew. So we make now a programmation with at least one activity a week. It's arts and crafts, therapy, outgoings, whatever we think about to do. So we send it to the CLSC, the social workers that we know, the external clinic in psychiatry. So it's a new program that we work on about for the last 3 years. So new people are always coming to do that. So that's what Les Amis d'Émile offer.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Can I ask a question also, Star, please? As a follow-up to that. Karina, I'm really interested in that, because we're also looking to see how we can open our clubhouse to the community, and particularly the people who have a mental illness or are working through one. I'm wondering, do you, and we can talk about this offline too, but do you go through an admissions process similar to your residents before admitting them, or it's really open?
It's really open, but we have a small inscription.
Registration, yeah.
Just a registration form. So it's just the name, the mental health problem, a contact, and what activities you prefer, if you need transportation and stuff like that. So we do not intervene. It's really people come here for activity. We don't do other stuff with them, no follow-ups. So.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
We share anytime.
What do you think, Vishaka? Do you think we're up to the office?
Yeah, I'm thinking I took the idea of line dance though.
We have a clubhouse ourselves. We have our own. We have our own digs at 2352 Verney.
Yeah. We have a tight time fitting our group in, but I think we could make it work. I think we could.
Yeah.
I'm just going to scroll through and see if I see anybody else. Just raise your hand, or you can also put a note in the chat too if you want to share something. Jerome?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Brian one more time. Brian contributed a lot to the first webinar without everybody knowing about it, because I contacted Maureen Ramsey with his help. So way back in March. So I was trying to track down Maureen, and I didn't have her phone number, her coordinates at all. And Brian put me on to her. Thanks again, Brian.
Oh, you're welcome. And I always remember the great time we had in Nova Scotia and Halifax at that conference. And
that was a blast.
We made a presentation. I made a presentation, Maureen, and then you. and I think it was
And
really,
David Seymour.
and then they got a standing ovation, and it certainly wasn't for me or Maureen, it was for those guys. They were wonderful. They were great ambassadors for the model, that's for sure.
They still are. You know, this year they did the same group of guys did their kind of presentation that they do for the OT students at McGill virtually. So they were, because that was another hurdle to jump, because so many of the residents at L'Abri, they're the best ambassadors. How they support one another and make it work, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Were you able to do your visits to Maison du Ville last year? I guess no, eh?
Not well, we kind of did. What we did was we did 2 day trips for apple picking because we couldn't have done it otherwise. But this year we are going to be going back, so we're quite excited about that.
Nice.
And I'm going.
Pardon me?
I'm going to Ile Saint Bernard.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody's really excited about that. So it's a tight turnaround to plan it, but I think it'll be really great. And the people of Manoir-du-Youville are happy to have us come back.
Well, let's talk. Maybe we can come with you this year.
Maybe.
Absolutely.
That'd be fun.
I could tell you guys too, like so many thanks. Like Jerome, you reminded me, and thanking Brian. The ideas that we got, all of us sister organizations started meeting with one another when COVID happened, because we were like, we're the only ones. Like all the rules that the public health officials are giving out apply to places if you have like a group home or if you have like a place, but that's not what we have. Right. And it was such a help. I remember, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to everybody that's here that, you know, you were willing to do that and share all your amazing ideas. And I just feel very lucky to be part of this.
Yeah.
Hi, Jocelyn. I just see you now. Did you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. It was really nice hearing from everybody and listening to such great stories. I really liked the segment on resilience. I thought that our organizations are proof of that, you know, what everybody's gone through the pandemic, and how it was actually an opportunity to even strengthen our community so much more. I just look at our experience at Our Harbour and everything they did with the street cafe and then our clubhouse, and I think it's amazing. I think it's an amazing network, an amazing model, and glad to be part of it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn, and thank you so much for being willing, being open to being interviewed. I hope you like it. I think we can close it out. People are slowly going, but again, one more time, I'll go through. Anybody raise their hand if they wanted to say anything? Everybody's like, yes, we want to say we'd like to have dinner now.
Well,
thanks everybody so much for everything. Happy 30th anniversary to
Happy 30th. Yes.
Happy 30th.
Thank you.
Happy 30th.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And,
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Star. Thanks for your work.
everybody.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much,
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody, for coming.
Bye. Thank you,
Thank you,
Star.
Star.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Holly, bye, Karina. Bye,
Bye.
Brian.
Thanks, Star.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Star.
Brian,
Thanks,
Cecily,
everybody.
Karina,
Bye-bye.
Vishaka, Leah. Bye-bye,
Bye.
Tanya.
Bye, Dolly.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.